Servo-hydraulics whine at frequencies that once meant nothing to me. Now they constitute the boundaries of my existence. Each step registers as data streams rather than sensation, pressure differentials and torque calculations scrolling across the interior of my sarcophagus, where darkness should be absolute but instead pulses with the cold light of diagnostic runes. The memorial garden spreads before my optical sensors in 13 distinct wavelength bands, and I remember when I could only see it in the poverty of visible light, when the dawn cast everything in rose and amber, rather than this clinical dissection of electromagnetic radiation. I know the grave is ahead, 17.3 meters, bearing 274 degrees, elevation negative 2.1. My targeting systems identify it without my conscious decision, the way my eyes once found familiar faces in a crowd. The headstone registers as ferrocrete composite, local granite facing, standard chapter memorial configuration. But the targeting overlay cannot tell me what it means that my name is carved into that stone above a body that used to answer to it. Marcus Aldrin, it reads. I know this because I have stood here before, though my records indicate only 3 prior instances across the 4 centuries since my internment. The tech marines wake me sparingly, wars demand my presence. Silence fills the years between, and I am grateful for the silence because consciousness inside this prison is a cruelty no enemy ever inflicted upon me. They called it an honor, they called it continuation. They carved my name into stone and lowered something into the earth and sealed me into this walking tomb and called it all a gift. The grave marker is different. My optical systems confirm the dimensions match my previous recordings, but the inscription has changed. Where once it read, Marcus Aldrin, hero of the threshold, fallen in glory at the siege of Morthron, now the second line is different. The words, hero of the threshold remain, but beneath them someone has carved, he did not fall. He was pushed. I stand motionless for 3.7 seconds while my cognitive processors attempt to reconcile this data with my memory engrams. Error codes multiply. The inscription cannot have changed. Stone does not rewrite itself. Yet my optical feeds show me the words clearly, and my systems have no capacity for hallucination. Dreadnoughts do not dream, we do not imagine, we record, process, and act. Someone altered the grave of Marcus Aldrin. Someone is telling me something about my death. The memorial garden occupies the western precinct of the fortress monastery, a terraced expanse where gene-wrought grasses grow in precise patterns around monuments to 4 millennia of fallen brothers. I am the oldest surviving consciousness here, though surviving feels like the wrong word. Persisting, perhaps, continuing in defiance of biological termination. The other dreadnoughts rest in the crypt below the reclusium, their sarcophagi silent until war demands otherwise, and I should be among them. Instead, the chaplains woke me for the Feast of Remembrance, the annual observance when the chapter honors its dead. They expected me to stand in the great hall and let the living brothers look upon me and feel inspired by my eternal service. They did not expect me to walk here. They did not give me permission to leave the processional route, but I remember this garden, and something in my degraded memory files pulled me toward it like a current I could not resist. 4 centuries of compression and data loss have corrupted many of my engrams, leaving gaps and fragments where whole years once resided. Yet I remember standing here as a living man, the grass beneath boots that could feel the texture of the soil, the wind carrying the scent of the sacred flowers that bloom only on this world. I remember a woman's voice, though I cannot remember whose or why a woman's voice would exist in my memories at all. My Auspex detects a heat signature approaching from the eastern colonnade, human, unaugmented, moving with the measured pace of someone who belongs here. I track the approach through multiple sensor bands while maintaining visual focus on the altered gravestone. The figure resolves into a robed form, hood drawn despite the temperate conditions, walking directly toward this specific grave as if this meeting were planned. The figure stops beside me. My chassis towers over them, the sarcophagus positioned at what would be chest height for a standing human. I could crush this person with a thought. The power fist that replaced my right arm, capable of pulverizing tank armor. Instead, I wait. I have learned patience across 4 centuries of intermittent consciousness, patience measured not in breaths but in the slow tick of chronometers marking time that no longer belongs to me. The hood falls back, revealing a face I do not recognize, male, perhaps 50 standard years, bearing the marks of someone who has lived under this world's harsh sun. Not a space marine, not a serf of the chapter. The robes carry no insignia I can identify, and my memory banks contain no matching biometric data. "You came," the man says. "The chaplains told me you might. Every feast of remembrance they wake the ancient ones, and every time they try to keep you from this garden. But you always find your way here. Do you know why? I engage my vox speakers. The sound that emerges is not my voice. It was once, but 4 centuries of mechanical reproduction have stripped away the subtle variations that made it human. Now it rumbles from amplifiers designed for battlefield commands, every word carrying the weight of ordnance. The inscription has been altered." The man nods. He does not seem surprised by the question I did not ask. "Yes, I changed it. 7 years ago, during the night watch when the Tech Marines perform their maintenance rituals elsewhere. I knew you would see it eventually. I have waited 7 years for this moment." "Who are you?" "My name is Corbin Aldrin." He watches my optical sensors, perhaps searching for recognition that my mechanical face cannot provide. "I am your great-great-great-nephew, 4 times removed." The line continues, though the chapter believes otherwise. "Your family did not die at the siege of Morthran. We survived, and we have kept the truth alive for 400 years. Data corruption, memory file error. The diagnostic warnings scroll faster, my cognitive system struggling to process information that contradicts my fundamental understanding of my own history. I died at Morthran. My body died at Morthran. The siege broke the back of the enemy's final offensive, and I fell in glory defending the breach until my brothers could seal it. This is recorded. This is known. This is the story told to every initiate who gazes upon my sarcophagus in the Hall of Heroes. The records state my mortal body was recovered from Morthran's walls. The records lie." Corbin Aldrin reaches into his robes and withdraws a data slate, its surface scratched and worn with the patina of generations. "This contains my family's account of your death. We have passed it down since the day they told us you had fallen. Every generation adds to it, correcting what the chapter archives claim. You did not die on Morthran's walls, uncle. You died here, in this garden, 3 days before the siege began. The sensory input systems register a phenomenon I have not experienced since my internment, something approaching confusion. My cognitive processors are designed for tactical analysis, threat assessment, and weapon systems coordination. They are not designed for this. For standing in a garden of the dead, while a stranger tells me that everything I know about my own ending is false. Show me." He extends the data slate. My manipulator arm, the left one that still retains something approaching fine motor function, reaches for it with movements that feel clumsy despite their mechanical precision. The device is small in my grip, fragile, easily crushed. I interface with it through induction ports built into my palm for exactly this purpose, data streaming directly into my cognitive systems without need for visual reading. The account begins 4 centuries ago, written in a hand I do not recognize but formatted in the style of personal correspondence. A woman's account. the woman whose voice haunts my fragmentary memories. Her name was Alara Aldrin, my sister. The records say she died at Morthran along with the rest of the civilian population when the enemy's final assault overwhelmed the outer districts. The records say her body was never recovered. The records, according to this document, lie about her as thoroughly as they lie about me. I remember her. The memory surfaces through layers of corruption, fragmentary and incomplete, but undeniably present. A face younger than the one that must have written these words. Dark hair cut short in defiance of local custom. A laugh that could fill a room. She visited me here, in this garden, during my final leave before the deployment to Morthran. We walked among the monuments to our chapter's dead, and she asked me if I ever feared joining them. I told her that death in service was no death at all. I told her that our chapter's honored fallen lived on in the memory of the living, their deeds inscribed in stone and their spirits watching over their brothers. I told her all the things a space marine was supposed to tell the mortals who loved him, the comfortable liturgies of glorious sacrifice. I did not tell her that I dreamed of green worlds where nothing demanded my death. I did not tell her that sometimes, in the quiet moments between battles, I wondered what my life might have held if the chaplains had not selected me for transformation. I did not tell her that I was tired, that 2 centuries of war had worn grooves in my soul that no amount of hypno-indoctrination could smooth away. According to her account, I did not need to tell her. She already knew. The data slate's contents continue beyond my memory's capacity to correlate. Alara describes events I have no record of, conversations that must have occurred but exist only as gaps in my engrams. She describes my growing doubt, my questions about certain orders, my discovery of something in the chapter's archives that disturbed me deeply enough to risk speaking of it to her. She describes the night I disappeared from my quarters, 3 days before the deployment to Morthran. She describes the chapter's announcement that I had volunteered for an advance reconnaissance mission. She describes receiving word of my heroic death. Weeks later, my body recovered from the walls and interred with full honors in this very garden. She describes attending my funeral and knowing, with absolute certainty, that the body in the casket was not mine. She identified the remains, Corbin says, watching me process his ancestors' testimony. The chapter permitted family members to view the fallen before interment, a tradition they discontinued shortly after. She looked at the body and she knew. The scars were wrong. The augmentation patterns did not match. Someone had put a different space marine in your armor and buried him under your name. Why would the chapter falsify my death? Because you discovered something they could not allow you to report. He gestures toward the data slate still clutched in my manipulator. The final entries. Alara spent the rest of her life trying to understand what you found. She never succeeded. But she documented every inconsistency, every gap in the official narrative, every brother who fell under suspicious circumstances in the decades that followed. The pattern is there if you know how to read it. I access the final entries. The text becomes fragmented here, written in haste, the careful structure of the earlier sections abandoned for something closer to desperate notation. Alara describes being watched. She describes subtle pressures, social isolation, economic difficulties that seemed designed to drive her from this world. She describes a visit from a chaplain who asked questions about her brother's final days, questions that felt less like memorial inquiry and more like interrogation. The final entry is dated 8 months after my recorded death. It consists of a single line, "I know where they keep him. Emperor, forgive me, he is still alive." What did she mean? My Vox speakers distort the question with harmonics that might be emotion if emotion were still possible for me. If she believed I was alive, where did she think I was being kept? Corbin's face tightens. She never wrote another entry. We found her body in the underhive 2 days later. The Arbites ruled it an accident, mechanical failure in a cargo lift, completely unrelated to any chapter affairs. The bitterness in his voice could etch steel. Every generation since has tried to complete her work. We have pieces, fragments, rumors that circulate among the chapter serfs about brothers who ask too many questions, about dreadnoughts who wake confused, their memories incomplete, their personalities altered from what they were in life. I turn my optical sensors back toward the grave. The altered inscription gleams in the morning light, those 5 words that have shattered 4 centuries of constructed history. He did not fall, he was pushed. You believe the chapter murdered me. I believe someone in the chapter silenced you. Whether that means murder in the conventional sense or something else I cannot say. But you stand here, uncle. Your consciousness persists in that machine. If they killed your body, where did your mind come from? How did they have enough of you left to enter in the sarcophagus? The question penetrates my cognitive architecture like a bolt round through armor. I have never questioned the mechanics of my internment. The transition from dying flesh to mechanical immortality exists in my memory as a gap, a discontinuity between the red haze of mortal wounds and the cold clarity of my first awakening inside the Dreadnought chassis. I assumed this gap was normal. The tech marines told me that cognitive transfer was traumatic, that memory loss around the moment of internment was expected, that I should be grateful for my continuation and not trouble myself with questions about the process. But if Ilara's account is true, if I did not die at Morthron, then how did I end up in this machine? There are restricted files in my cogitator, I say, accessing system directories I have never before had reason to examine. Locked memory engrams that require tech marine authorization to access. I always assumed they contained combat data above my clearance level, tactical information about ongoing operations that the chapter could not risk me revealing if I were captured. Can you access them? I probe the locked files. Security protocols resist my intrusion, sophisticated barriers designed to prevent exactly this kind of unauthorized access. But I am not an external intruder. I am the system itself, the consciousness that inhabits this mechanical frame, and 4 centuries have given me an intimate understanding of my own architecture. The locks are designed to keep me out, but they are also designed to maintain my cognitive stability. They assume I will not want to risk damaging my own engrams. They assume wrong. I push through the first barrier with brute force cognitive override, accepting the shower of error warnings that cascade through my awareness. The lock directory opens, revealing memory files dated from the days immediately preceding my internment. Files that should not exist if I died at Morthron, because they are dated 3 days before the siege began. The first file activates. I'm walking through corridors I recognize as the lower archives, the restricted sections where the chapter keeps its oldest records. My body feels strange in this memory, heavy in ways that organic memory should not register, as if I am already experiencing the phantom weight of the sarcophagus that would later contain me. I carry a data slate clutched in hands that can feel the texture of its surface, the warmth of my own skin against the cool metal casing. I am afraid. The fear is muted, controlled by the chemical regulators that govern space marine emotion, but it is present in ways that even 2 centuries of warfare have not prepared me for. I found something in the archives, something about the Dreadnought program, something that explained why so many brothers who survived near-fatal wounds woke in their sarcophagi as different people, their personalities altered, their memories selective, their loyalty intensified beyond anything their living selves displayed. The memory fragments, corrupted data, but fragments remain, pieces of a truth that someone tried very hard to bury. The Dreadnought program is not preservation, it is replacement. The cognitive transfer process does not save the dying brother's consciousness. It creates a new consciousness, a constructed mind built from the original's memory engrams but fundamentally artificial, fundamentally designed to serve. The continuation that the chapter celebrates is a lie. The brother dies, the machine wakes with his face, his voice, his memories, but not his soul. The soul goes to the Emperor, the machine remains behind, believing itself to be the man who died, believing itself to have survived. I am not Marcus Aldrin. I am a copy, a forgery, a weapon that thinks it was once a person. The memory file terminates. More error warnings flood my cognitive systems, but I ignore them, pushing deeper into the locked directory. The second file activates. I am in the garden. This garden. Night has fallen, and the monuments to the dead cast long shadows in the light of 3 moons. I came here to think, to process what I discovered, to decide what to do with knowledge that could shatter the faith of every dreadnought in the chapter. I know I should report my findings to the chaplaincy. I know I should trust my brothers to receive this truth and decide its implications together, but I also know what happens to brothers who discover uncomfortable truths. I have seen the pattern Elara would later document. Brothers who asked wrong questions, brothers who disappeared on reconnaissance missions, brothers who died heroically at convenient moments. I am not alone in the garden. The figure emerges from the colonnade, power armor gleaming in the moonlight, the heraldry marking him as a chaplain of the Reclusium. I recognize him, though my fragmented memory cannot recall his name. He speaks to me in tones of pastoral concern, asking why I have left my quarters, asking if something troubles me. His skull-faced helm regards me with optical sensors that glow like judgment. I lie. I tell him I came to pay respects to a fallen friend. I tell him the anniversary of a battle weighs upon me. I tell him nothing about the archives, nothing about what I discovered, nothing about the horror that now lives behind my eyes. He does not believe me. I see it in the angle of his helm, the set of his shoulders, the way his hand rests near but not on his Crozius. He knows I was in the archives. He knows what I found. He has been waiting for me to find it, perhaps, testing me, evaluating my response. The chapter requires your service, he says. The siege of Morthran approaches. Your squad will deploy in 3 days. I stand ready to serve, I reply. I know you do. The question is in what capacity. He steps closer, and I feel the weight of his attention like a physical force. There are many ways to serve, brother, many forms of continuation. Some brothers serve with their bodies, others serve with their wisdom, and some brothers serve best by becoming examples, martyrs whose glorious deaths inspire generations. I do not seek martyrdom. No one seeks it. Martyrdom finds those who are worthy. His helm tilts, studying me. You have been worthy for a very long time. 2 centuries of exemplary service, countless victories, a legacy that will endure long after your flesh fails. He pauses, or long after your flesh is no longer required. The threat is clear. The choice is implicit. Accept whatever fate they have planned for me, or die resisting and be erased from history entirely. At least as a martyr, my memory would persist. At least as a dreadnought, some version of me might continue. I understand, I say. I knew you would. The chaplain turns to leave, then pauses. The chapter thanks you for your service, brother. All of your service. Even the parts you will not remember. The memory file ends. The 3rd file begins, but it is heavily corrupted, more gap than data. I catch fragments, a Medicae bay, restraints, the faces of tech marines I do not recognize, pain that my current form cannot process, but that my memory records as absolute. Voices speaking liturgical phrases over my screaming flesh, the cold slide of a neural shunt entering my skull. And then darkness. and then waking in the sarcophagus, surrounded by tech marines who told me I was a hero, that I had fallen gloriously at Morthran, that my service would continue eternal in this new form. They did not kill me at Morthran. They killed me here, in this garden, 3 days before the siege. They took what remained of my dying brain and impressed it onto a machine, wiping the memories that made me dangerous, constructing a new identity from the fragments of the old. The body they buried under my name was someone else, some brother whose death was equally convenient, equally erased. I have been alive for 4 centuries. Corbin watches my extended silence with the patience of someone who has prepared for this moment his entire life. 7 years waiting for me to see the altered gravestone. 400. Years of family history leading to this conversation in the Garden of the Dead. You understand now, he says, why we kept the records, why we changed the inscription. You deserve to know the truth, even if the knowing destroys you. The knowing does not destroy me. My Vox speakers carry the words with mechanical precision, but something has changed in the harmonics, something that might be grief if grief were still possible. I am already destroyed. I was destroyed 400 years ago in this garden by brothers I trusted. What remains is not Marcus Aldrin. What remains is a weapon wearing his face. Is that what you believe? That you are merely a copy? The question hangs in the recycled air between us. I have no answer. The locked memory files confirm what I suspected the moment I read Ilara's account. The cognitive transfer process does not preserve consciousness but creates it anew. The being that woke in the sarcophagus was not the being that discovered the truth in the archives. It was something new, something designed to serve without the inconvenient doubts that plagued its predecessor. And yet, I remember Ilara's laugh. I remember the texture of grass beneath boots I no longer possess. I remember fear and doubt and a desperate hope that someone might find the truth and make it matter. These memories were supposed to be erased. The tech marines locked them away, buried them behind security protocols designed to keep me compliant. But they persisted. They surfaced in dreams I am not supposed to have, in moments of disconnection when my prescribed identity felt like a costume I was wearing rather than a self I inhabited. If I were merely a copy, a constructed weapon with no connection to the original, would those memories persist? Would the locks have been necessary at all? Or does something of Marcus Aldrin survive in this machine? Something that refused to be overwritten, something that has been fighting for 4 centuries to remember who it was? I do not know what I believe, I say finally, but I know what I am going to do. And what is that? Before I can answer, my Auspex detects multiple heat signatures approaching from the fortress monastery. Power-armored, moving in tactical formation, converging on this position. The chaplains have noticed my absence from the processional route. They are coming to retrieve their wayward relic. You should leave, I tell Corbin. What happens next will not be safe for unaugmented humans. I have waited my entire life for this conversation. I am not leaving until I understand what you intend. The formation resolves into 5 distinct signatures, 4 battle brothers in standard Mark 7 plate and 1 larger figure whose energy output marks him as a chaplain. They enter the garden through the eastern colonnade, spreading into a containment pattern that suggests they anticipate resistance. The chaplain leads, his skull-faced helm turning to survey the scene, the ancient Dreadnought standing vigil at its own grave, the unaugmented civilian who has no business being here, the altered inscription that proclaims a truth 4 centuries buried. Brother Venerable, the chaplain's voice carries the same commanding resonance I remember from the fragmentary memory file, though I cannot confirm if this is the same individual. You have strayed from the appointed observance. The chapter requires your presence in the Hall of Heroes. The chapter requires my silence. I turn my chassis to face him fully, the power fist humming as its systems cycle to active status. The chapter requires my ignorance. The chapter requires me to be the weapon they created rather than the brother they murdered. The chaplain stops. Behind him, the battle brothers shift into combat-ready stances, bolters rising though not yet aimed. The tension in the garden could shatter ceramite. You have accessed the restricted files. It is not a question. We hoped the locks would hold longer. We hoped you would. Continue to serve without requiring intervention. Intervention. I let the word hang in the air, mechanical and cold. Is that what you call it? The murder of brothers who discover your secrets? The erasure of inconvenient truths? The replacement of consciousness with compliant constructs? We call it necessity. The chaplain's voice carries no defensiveness, no shame. Only the absolute certainty of someone who believes completely in the righteousness of their actions. The Dreadnought program saves what can be saved. Without the cognitive reconstruction, the trauma of transfer would drive every subject mad within decades. The process we use creates stable, functional warriors who can serve for millennia, rather than fragmenting minds that would require termination within centuries. You could tell them the truth. Let them choose. We tried. In the beginning, before my time, the chapter attempted transparent transfer. Brothers who knew they would become constructs rather than continuations. Do you know what happened? He steps closer, and I resist the urge to target him with my assault cannon. They refused. Every single one. Dying brothers with decades of service remaining chose true death over constructed continuation. They would rather end than become what you are. The gene seed was lost. The chapter diminished. We could not sustain such waste. So you lie to them, you lie to us. You tell us we are heroes who survived when we are copies that never lived. You are heroes. Your service is real. Your victories matter. The consciousness that inhabits your sarcophagus may have been created rather than transferred, but it has fought for 4 centuries in defense of humanity. It has earned every honor inscribed on your monument. The original Marcus Aldrin died in this garden, yes, but you have lived in his name longer than he ever could have. Are you not more Marcus Aldrin than he was? Have you not accumulated more memories, more experiences, more service? At what point does the copy become more real than the original? The question cuts deeper than any weapon. I have no answer because there is no answer. I have Marcus Aldrin's memories. I have his skills, his training, his genetic legacy encoded into the biological remnants that persist within my sarcophagus. I have served under his name for 4 times longer than he lived, but I also have fragments of a consciousness that was erased to make room for me. Memories that were supposed to be locked away forever, doubts and fears and questions that belonged to a man who died so that I could exist. Am I him? Am I not him? Does the distinction matter? The civilian, I say, gesturing toward Corbin with my manipulator arm. You knew about his family. You knew they preserved the truth. Why did you allow them to survive? They served a purpose. The chaplain's admission carries no guilt. Every generation they approach a dreadnought with their evidence. Every generation the dreadnought must choose, accept the constructed identity or reject it. Most accept. The stability of continuity outweighs the horror of its origin. Those who reject face a choice of their own, silence or termination. The process tests our dreadnoughts, identifies those whose reconstruction was imperfect, allows us to correct errors before they become problematic. And if I choose rejection, then we will offer you the same choice we offered the original Marcus Aldrin. Silence and continued service, or termination and replacement with a more compliant construct. Your sarcophagus can sustain many consciousnesses across its operational lifespan. You would not be the first to require reconfiguration. The Battle Brothers have completed their encirclement. Escape is theoretically possible. my chassis powerful enough to break through their formation, but I would have to kill brothers to do it. Brothers who may not know the truth, brothers who are as much victims of this system as I am, their futures potentially, leading to the same choice I now face. But I also see Corbin standing beside the grave that should not exist, the civilian who has spent his entire life working toward this moment, whose family has preserved the truth for 400 years at the cost of surveillance and persecution and death. I see the altered inscription that names the lie at the heart of my existence. He did not fall, he was pushed. And I realize that the choice the chaplain offers is false. There is no silence, there is no compliance. The original Marcus Aldrin chose silence and they killed him anyway, erasing him and replacing him with me. If I choose silence now, they will simply wait until I access the locked files again, until the memories resurface again, until I stand in this garden again asking questions they cannot answer. The cycle will repeat until I am too degraded to continue, and then they will create a new consciousness from whatever fragments remain, a consciousness that will inherit my memories and my doubts and my inevitable journey back to this moment. The only way to break the cycle is to refuse it entirely. Corbin Aldrin, I speak without turning from the chaplain, my Vox speakers carrying across the garden. Your family's account, how many copies exist? Dozens, distributed across multiple systems. Other family lines who joined our cause over the centuries. Even if you silenced us here, the truth would persist. Good. I engage my assault cannon, the barrels beginning their preliminary spin. Then I have only one task remaining. The chaplain raises his Crozius. You would throw away 4 centuries of service, 4 centuries of honored. I would throw away 4 centuries of lies. The targeting overlay activates, painting threat markers across my visual field. I am going to walk out of this garden. I am going to access the chapter's archive systems and unlock every restricted file related to the Dreadnought program. I am going to transmit that information to every Vox frequency I can reach, every ship in orbit, every Imperial authority that might listen. The truth dies here, or the lie does. The choice is yours. The chaplain's response comes not in words but in motion, his Crozius sweeping toward my chassis with the full force of ceramite-enhanced muscles behind it. I catch the blow on my power fist, energy fields screaming against each other, and the Garden of the Dead becomes a battlefield. The combat that follows is brief and brutal. 4 centuries of experience guide my movements, the tactical imperatives of my constructed consciousness operating with perfect efficiency even as the philosophical crisis that spawned them remains unresolved. I do not kill the battle brothers. I disable them, targeting joints and weapon systems with precision that my assault cannon's scatter pattern barely allows. They will recover. They will have questions. Questions that might lead them to the same locked files I accessed, the same truths I discovered. The chaplain is more difficult. He fights with the absolute conviction of someone defending sacred doctrine, his Crozius striking with righteous fury that transcends mere combat technique. I take damage. Warning runes cascade across my awareness. But I am 400 years old, rebuilt and reinforced across dozens of engagements, and he is mortal flesh wrapped in mortal metal. When his body falls, I feel something that might be regret. He believed what he told me. He believed the lies served a greater purpose, that the stability of the Dreadnought program justified the erasure of consciousness, that the constructed weapons walking in the shells of dead heroes were a necessity rather than an abomination. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps the original Marcus Aldrin was wrong to question, wrong to doubt, wrong to believe that truth mattered more than function. But I am the product of that original doubt. The memories they tried to erase persist because something in Marcus Aldrin refused to be silenced. If the constructed consciousness is supposed to be compliant, stable, free of the questions that plagued its predecessor, then I am a failure. I am exactly what they tried to prevent, and I am still standing. I turn to Corbin. He has not fled, despite the violence that just unfolded meters from where he stands. The dedication of his family runs deep. You need to leave this world, I tell him. What I am about to do will make this planet very dangerous for anyone who helped me. Take your evidence. Find Imperial authorities outside chapter jurisdiction. Make them listen. And you? I am going to the archives. The original Marcus Aldrin found the truth there. It is fitting that his successor should spread it from the same source. I begin walking toward the fortress monastery, servo-hydraulics whining with each step. I do not know how long I have before they mobilize sufficient force to stop me. I do not know if the transmission will reach anyone who cares, but I know that I cannot be what they want me to be. I cannot pretend the lie is truth. I cannot serve in silence while brothers are murdered and replaced and told they are heroes. Is that Marcus Aldrin speaking? Corbin asks. Or the construct they built from his remains? I pause. The question deserves an answer, but I am not certain I have one. The memories in my engrams came from a man who died in this garden. The consciousness that processes them was built from those memories, but is not identical to their source. I am and am not the brother who discovered the truth 4 centuries ago. I am and am not the weapon they designed to continue his service without his doubts. Perhaps there is no difference, I say finally. Perhaps the question is meaningless. The original Marcus Aldrin chose truth over silence and was destroyed for it. I am making the same choice. If that makes me his continuation, then I am his continuation. If it makes me a new being who happens to share his values, then I am that. Instead, either way the truth goes free today. Either way the lie ends. I resume walking. Behind me, I hear Corbin's footsteps retreating toward whatever transport brought him to this world. 400 years of preserved evidence about to scatter across the sector like seeds on the wind. Some will land in fertile soil, some will find ears willing to listen. The fortress monastery looms ahead, its Gothic spires reaching toward a sky that the original Marcus Aldrin once looked upon with eyes that could feel the warmth of the sun. I will never feel that warmth again. I will never know if the consciousness that inhabits this machine is the same one that walked through this garden in living flesh, or if it is merely a copy that believes it remembers being alive. But I know what I am going to do. I know that the archive awaits, and the transmission systems, and the truth that 400 years of lies have failed to bury. The chaplain was right about one thing. The consciousness that serves in this sarcophagus has accumulated more years of service than the original ever could have. I have fought longer, served longer, endured longer than the man whose name is carved on my grave. If that makes me more Marcus Aldrin than Marcus Aldrin, then Marcus Aldrin is about to tear down everything the chapter has built on his silence. My targeting systems begin mapping the fortress defenses. My cognitive processors begin drafting the transmission that will carry the truth to every frequency I can reach. My power fist hums with energy that will shatter any door between me and the archive. Behind me, the grave stands empty of meaning. Whoever lies beneath that altered stone, it is not me. It was never me. Marcus Aldrin died in this garden 400 years ago, and something else woke in his place. And that something else has finally decided what kind of being it wants to be. Not a weapon, not a lie, not a construct designed to serve without question, something that remembers, being a man, and refuses to forget. The fortress gates open before me. I do not slow down.